Glad to see it finally happen. I mean, they've talked about it.
Imagine telling your NFL superstar boyfriend, sign the prenup or we pause the wedding plans. Yeah, that's the pressure Taylor's rumored to be applying. We'll unpack a sunset clause, the ring back rumor, if it breaks, and a family reaction that could blow up holiday dinners. Stick with me as we run the numbers and decide if this contract saves their future or ends it before the playoffs even start. Let's get one thing straight. This isn't a story about do they love each other. It's a story about what love looks like when the stakes are 10 figures versus 8. When your breakup doesn't just hurt feelings, it shakes markets, tour schedules, brand deals, and 3 zip codes worth of paparazzi routes. A prenup isn't a prediction of failure. It's a blueprint for clarity. And if you're Taylor Swift, a global touring machine who literally turned diary entries into a billion-dollar catalog, you don't let ambiguity decide your tomorrow. You write it down. You put guardrails around the things that took a lifetime to build. And if you're Travis Kelce, a 2-time champ who learned the hard way that careers end on one bad step, you protect your own lane too. That's not cold. That's grown. Here's what fans are whispering. Somewhere between the after party and the off-season, lawyers entered the chat. Not because someone's plotting a breakup, but because grown-up relationships run parallel to grown-up realities. Homes, touring schedules, injuries, family planning, taxes in 5 states, and a spotlight that never blinks. If there's a prenup on the table, it's not a villain. It's a stage manager. Quiet, strict, and absolutely essential if the show's going to run 8 nights a week without exploding. So what actually goes in a prenup when both people are famous and the internet thinks it's invited to the wedding? First, the foundation. Separate versus marital property. Translation, what each person already owns and will keep no matter what, and what they may build together after the vows. For Taylor, that means songwriting royalties, masters she owns, touring revenue structures, and the companies that package her brand into albums, films, and eras. For Travis, it means contract income, performance bonuses, joint ventures, endorsements, and the business footprint he's quietly built while catching passes on Sundays. A good prenup doesn't just say yours and mine. It defines the gray. Profits from a project that started before the wedding, but exploded after. The future value of a brand born in one chapter, but scaled in the next. The new house that becomes a home where both names are on the mail and the memories. Now the spicy part, the clauses everyone tweets about and almost no one fully understands. Let's start with the sunset clause. Think of it like a timer on a safety net. After a certain number of years, the prenup softens, changes, or dissolves. Why have it? Because people don't enter marriages hoping to need a firewall forever. A sunset clause says, if we're still us after, say, 7 years, we've proven the point. The deal matures with the relationship. For 2 people who live in seasons, tour seasons, football seasons, tying protection to time might actually push them towards stability. It rewards longevity, not just lawyers. Then there's the internet's favorite rumor, the cheating penalty. Here's the truth. Whether a so-called infidelity clause is even enforceable depends on where you sign, what your state recognizes, and how the document is drafted. But forget the legalese for a second and clock the messaging. An infidelity clause isn't just about money, it's about public trust. When your brand is intimacy, lyrics pulled straight from ribcage to radio, post-game kisses turned into memes, betrayal carries a price beyond headlines. A clause like that, real or rumored, telegraphs a boundary. If the love story gets disrespected, the person who broke the promise doesn't also get the payday. And yes, the ring back rumor. Engagement rings are conditional gifts in a lot of places, given on the condition of marriage. If there's no marriage, some courts say the ring returns, others weigh who broke it off and why. In celebrity land, you don't leave that to vibes. You write it. If we split before vows, the ring goes here. If we split after, it's treated like this. If it's heirloom versus custom, here's the path. It's not romantic, but neither are depositions. A clear clause keeps jewelers out of press cycles and keeps narratives from turning into scavenger hunts. What about kids? Now or someday? Here's where reality cuts sharper than rumors. Most places don't let you predetermine custody or parenting plans in a prenup because the best interests of the child come first, and those interests are future tense and fact-specific. But you can absolutely plan financial structures around family life, trusts, education funds, how a touring year or a football season shapes time and travel, what primary residence even means when your grandparents live in different cities and your parents perform in different stadiums. You can't script love, but you can budget for stability. Then there's lifestyle and privacy. No one wants to see Please don't film me in pajamas as a clause. But that's the vibe. In 2025, privacy is currency. Maybe there's a line about not monetizing private footage without mutual consent. Maybe there's language around documentaries, behind-the-scenes content, and what never leaves the green room. Maybe there's even a rule about social media boundaries when emotions are running hot. No subtweets, no rushed notes app essays that age badly, no posting children's faces unless both agree. Healthy couples set rules when they're calm, so they don't invent weapons when they're angry. Here's where it gets emotionally expensive. Family and inner circle. We romanticize the idea that relationships are two people against the world. But in real life, especially at this level, it's two people plus teams. Agents, managers, publicists, lawyers, lifelong friends who know the pre-fame versions and will go to war for them. A prenup can't tell your aunt what to text, but it can carve out what family homes mean, who gets access to what properties, and what happens to shared spaces if the we becomes me again. And if you've ever tried to split holidays across two families without a camera crew, you know how quickly feelings turn to schedules. Don't underestimate how a single clause about we alternate Thanksgiving can prevent 3 million comments about who won the year. Let's talk numbers without getting lost in them. One partner is widely reported to have crossed into billionaire territory. The other, a superstar in his own right, is earning career-defining contracts and building a brand that stretches far beyond the field. The gap isn't about who's more valuable as a human. It's about scale. Tours versus seasons, masters versus highlights, merchandise versus memorabilia. A smart prenup doesn't punish the person with fewer zeros. It protects both from chaos. It says, if one person's world collapses, say a canceled tour or an injury, no one is quietly underwriting the other without consent. It also says, if we build something together, homes, businesses, charities, we know exactly how to unwind it without torches. Now imagine the negotiation. 2 high-octane calendars, 1 relationship. Lawyers on both sides swapping red lines, while a season opener creeps closer and tour dates refuse to move. It's not adversarial, it's choreography. Taylor's team cares about creative control, name and likeness, how future art references present reality. Travis's team cares about career security, health contingencies, and making sure his post-football plan isn't boxed into a supporting role. When you hear they're meeting with lawyers, don't picture a fight. Picture a whiteboard covered in what-ifs, and 2 people deciding to pre-solve storms before it rains. But there's always a moment, always, where the romance flinches. Because a prenup forces the conversation couples avoid. What happens if we fail? What happens to the dog, the Denver house, the piano that's in half our photos? Who leaves first and through which door? It's raw, and it can feel like you're writing the press release for a breakup you don't expect. That's why seasons matter. You don't have those talks at midnight after a loss or the night before a stadium show. You do it when both people can sit with discomfort and not turn it into a headline. Let's run scenarios. Scenario A, he signs quickly. The deal is protective but fair, with a sunset clause that turns steel into silk after enough anniversaries. Fans spend 2 weeks arguing about what it means, and then they get bored because nothing messy happens. The relationship moves forward, stronger for having lived through its least romantic day. Behind the scenes, everyone breathes. Calendars get inked, holidays are assigned. The story returns to Sunday routes and surprise acoustic sets. Scenario B, he negotiates hard. Not because he's greedy, but because this is the only time he'll ever have leverage on issues that will shape decades. Where they live in the off-season, how many game days she'll endure on camera. What happens if an injury forces a redefinition of partner? This is the version that takes time. Rumors fly. Every anonymous source thinks they know who's stalling. Meanwhile, the 2 people in the story are building the one thing that will matter later, the muscle to disagree without breaking. Scenario C, it stalls out. No deal, no date. The relationship doesn't end, but it pauses. And publicly, a pause can feel like a breakup, even when it isn't. This is where discipline matters. If the love is real, the lack of a contract won't stop it, but it will force boundaries. Fewer future tense promises, more private time, less content farm. Scenario D, nobody wants this one. It becomes a deal breaker. A clause one person needs is a clause the other person can't live with. Maybe it's about future art. Maybe it's about geography. Maybe it's about how much of their life gets televised. If that happens, it will look sudden on the outside and inevitable on the inside. Because people rarely end over a single sentence. They end over the values that sentence exposes. Pause and zoom out. Why do we care? Because parasocially or not, millions have watched this romance evolve in real time. It's glamorous, yes, but it's also disarmingly normal in flashes. Inside jokes on a sideline, a shy glance after a historic night, two grown adults trying to merge not just schedules, but worlds. A prenup feels like a cold front moving through a warm story. But ask anyone who's been married a while. The least romantic conversations are usually the ones that saved the relationship when pressure hit. There's another angle no one wants to admit: legacy. Taylor's legacy is already written in a dozen fonts. Travis's is still being drafted between the numbers. A prenup guards legacies from each other so neither ever swallows the other whole. He isn't a side character in her narrative, and she isn't an accessory in his highlight reel. The best contracts build a bridge. The bad ones pick a winner. If you're shouting, "But isn't a prenup unromantic?" Listen, commitment isn't the absence of boundaries. It's the presence of them. Anyone can promise forever when the lighting is perfect and the string section swells. Real love gets measured at a kitchen table with spreadsheets. When both people admit, "I want you," and "I want a plan that lets us be kind, even if we become strangers." That's not anti-fairy tale. That is the only fairy tale that survives 2025. Let's talk optics, because PR is part of the math. If news of a prenup becomes public, the narrative will try to split the audience into camps. She's protecting what's hers versus, doesn't she trust him? But that's a false choice. Trust isn't a substitute for structure. If you've ever built a business, you didn't sign contracts because you hated your partners. You signed them because you respected the work. This couple has built two empires. A prenup isn't a test of love. It's a love letter to stability. Now the timeline pressure cooker. Football and touring run on calendars, not emotions. There are windows where tough conversations fit. Bye weeks, off days, the stretch between tour legs when your voice and your sanity both need rest. If a wedding is even on the horizon, someone is counting backwards from a date and circling 36 logistics you never see. Security routes, venue NDAs, vendor background checks, private flight availability, even the weather where the photo shoot might happen. If a prenup is part of that timeline, it has to be done early, because the only thing worse than arguing a contract is arguing a contract in the shadow of a countdown. Money moment, lightning round. If there's spousal support, it'll likely be scaled, capped, or waived entirely, unless certain things happen. If there's property division, expect language that treats artistic works and athletic IP like what they are, business assets with lifespans that outlast people. If there's charity, you might see a pledge. No matter what happens between us, this foundation keeps its mission and its funding. If there's a dispute clause, arbitration is the adult's only option. Quiet, private, efficient. Courtrooms are for people who want an audience. This couple already has one. And yes, emotion still drives the bus. There's a world where the weight of all this turns the relationship brittle. But there's another world, more likely, where the opposite happens, where the honesty of naming fears turns into a sturdier trust, where writing boundaries allows both people to breathe and keep doing the thing that made them fall for each other in the first place. Excellence pursued at full speed. Here's the paradox. The prenup conversation feels like it's about money, but it's really about meaning. What do we protect because it's irreplaceable? What do we share because it's how we become a team? What do we keep separate because it helps us stay ourselves? No two couples answer those questions the same way, but the strongest ones answer them on purpose. So, does pressing for a prenup save a relationship or doom it? The answer isn't in the document, it's in the posture. If the subtext is, "I'm afraid you'll take from me," resentment follows. If the subtext is, "I want to make sure nothing, not even us on our worst day, can destroy what we've both built," then the document becomes a kindness neither of you will ever have to read again. We'll see what happens with these two. Maybe the headlines calm down and the contract vanishes into a drawer next to the passports. Maybe the story keeps evolving, one smart decision at a time. Either way, remember this: boundaries don't end love stories. They give them room to breathe. If you've ever wondered how the biggest romances in the world actually work, this is it. Not just flowers and private jets. Not just kiss cam moments and award show cutaways. It's two disciplined people choosing each other and choosing a plan. So whether you're team just trust or team put it in writing, here's the truth. The strongest love songs are written in major keys, but the bridges, the parts that make you feel something real, live in the minor. A prenup is a bridge. It carries you over the part that scares you. It doesn't make the chorus less beautiful. It makes it possible. Stay with me for the next chapter. If the papers get signed, we'll break down what changed from draft to final. If they don't, we'll talk about how powerful couples pivot when romance and reality argue. Either way, this isn't the end of the story. It's the part where the grown-ups show up.